What happened? He would crawl to the front of the stage on all fours, stare intently at the people that were harassing him to the point where they would literally freak out and they would leave. He did this whenever anything really bad was happening. He never got angry beyond that. He never became physical. But this was his way of dealing with that. And to me, this was the beginning of understanding him as a human being. He had the cognitive abilities of a 4-year-old child. But as we all know, 4-year-old children have full developed personalities in many ways. They can speak and they can have desires, they can have emotions, and Schlitzie was capable of all of that. In the book, my point of view is always fly on the wall. I obviously, the historical documents around Schlitzie are very sparse, so I made a lot of assumptions, and then I used as much research material to back up those assumptions as I could. So his earliest appearance in sideshows was in Coney Island as a 19, 20-year-old. But before that, he was sold by his parents to the Coney Island entrepreneur who eventually used him in the sideshow. He just didn't do any actual performing until he was a little bit older. So there's a section in the book where I just deal with how that might have turned out. I can't imagine that his mother was happy about this. All his life, Schlitzie was attracted to middle-aged women, not sexually, just attracted. He wanted their affection. He wanted their love and affection. I think he was always seeking the mother that he was ripped away from at the age of 8. Once again, my intention here was to try to understand him as a human being. I connected with a professional genealogist named Brant Boucher, lives in Montreal, and he did a very thorough search. He had all kinds of great software. He got as far as maybe where Schlitzie was living in the early 1900s. Schlitzie was born in 1901. As I say, close but no cigar. Absolutely no guarantee. But I thought I should include it in the book just to show that I did what I could in terms of genealogical research. Now this is another important character for me, and from this character, Zip, the sideshow Pinhead exhibited for many, many decades in the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus. This is where I got the name Zippy. I had these postcards from an early point in my life, and I thought Zip was a nice name. It turned out that Zip was an actor. There was a lot of talk about that in various publications and through the internet. And through all my research, I discovered his sister was interviewed by the New Yorker magazine in 1926. And his sister said that he was an actor. He was not a pinhead. He was a black man born in New Jersey in 1864. He was born with the name William Henry Jackson. 5 years into drawing Zippy, I was looking through a circus history book, and I saw that. My name, my full name, is William Henry Jackson Griffith, named after my great-grandfather, who was a famous photographer. So my jaw dropped, and I thought, okay, I'm meant to be doing this. So these are images that come up when you look at Zip's early career. I could see instantly, these are based on photographs, I could see instantly this was a man posing as a pinhead. You can almost see him obeying the photographer's instructions. You know, look weird, look quizzical, look strange. The bottom left is a dead giveaway to me that this is a man trying to be a pinhead. Schlitzie was too unself-conscious to do this kind of thing. This guy was very self-aware. So here's my very first Zippy strip. And if you look at the face of Zippy, the proto-Zippy in this, that's Schlitzie. I saw Freaks, this is going to come up in a few minutes, I saw Freaks in 1963 at the age of 19 as an art student in Brooklyn. And I left the theater kind of in a daze, and I knew this was a watershed moment for me, for something or other. I had no idea what. I was not a cartoonist at that time. I was a painter. I was an artist. And I had no access to any material on Schlitzie. There was no books, no photographs. It took 7 years from the moment I saw him in Freaks until 1970 when I came across a postcard of him. And that's what I used for that image of Zippy there. This is Schlitzie as he has appeared in a couple of different Zippy strips over the decades. On the top strip, the 3 images of Schlitzie are all based on scenes from Freaks. So here's Schlitzie's world. Schlitzie was one of the top 10 sideshow acts from the 20s to the 50s. He earned for his managers huge amounts of money. He was hugely successful, even though his act consisted basically of almost nothing. He just stood there. Sometimes he pretended to play a ukulele. He did one card trick where all of the cards in the deck were all the 6 of spades. So he told you to choose a card, and then he guessed it was a 6 of spades because they were all the 6 of spades. He did dances. He did funny little things, but he basically stood there and just listened as the talker. By the way, that's what they're called. They're not called barkers. They're called talkers. The talker would say, you know, a brain the size of a walnut, he lives on grasshoppers. And they would just go on and on and on about how crazy and weird and non-human he was. And Schlitzie would just sort of sit there, and the audience just loved it. And then Schlitzie would imitate people in the audience. He was like a child. He was a mimic. His default mood was happy and smiling. He had a good life up until a certain point, which I'll get to later. These are people that he would be playing with. That's Harry Earl and his sister, Midget. This is a sideshow in the state of Washington, 1930s. You know, this was more of like a 50s girly sideshow. You know, when you Google American Sideshow, Google image, you get wonderful material, great stuff. This is Coney Island in the 40s, the sideshow, the World Circus sideshow. So here I am at the age of 19. I was going to Pratt, art school in Brooklyn. I saw a notice on the student union wall, a bulletin board. It said, Freaks, 1932, Todd Browning. It was a screening somewhere in the West Village, and it said $1. So I went. I had no particular interest in Todd Browning. I didn't really know who he was. I was just intrigued by the poster. So I went and saw the show, and like it says, a seed was planted. I just sat there mesmerized. There's Schlitzie. You can just see the happiness on this guy's face. Unless you were, you know, hurting or tormenting him, he was a happy child, basically. He did like beer, and that had to be doled out in very small portions. that amount of beer he has there is like a 1 inch of beer. That's about all he ever got at any particular setting. There's the entire cast of Freaks. This is a photo that I found after a lot of research. It even has members of the cast that weren't in the movie. It's got 3 or 4 people that never appeared in the movie. But there they are, all of them. You can see Schlitzie's size here. He's a little over 4 feet tall. Always dressed as a female, always. At the bottom, in the middle, the man without the bottom half of his body, that's Johnny Eck. Johnny Eck was the most professionally successful of all the sideshow performers. He had a manager. He did artwork. He sold paintings. He was the most dedicated member of that whole cast, having a long-term career. On the far right is Wallace Ford, who played Frozzo the Clown, who was in the big moment, the scene in Freaks where Schlitzie has a major moment. This is Todd Browning. There he is on the set of Freaks in the last sequence, the revenge scene, when the Freaks. That's Cleo, the trapeze artist, who connives to poison and kill the midget, who she finds has inherited a lot of money. And she plots his death with the strong man, and the Freaks find out about it, and they seek revenge on her. In the original draft of the film, they actually castrated Hercules, the strong man. That was dropped out of the film. There's no print that shows it. I looked. A print with that ending doesn't exist. But that's Todd Browning with one of the scenes at the end. And there's Harry Earls and his two sisters. Harry Earls became very cranky later in life. He would not sign autographs. He would not respond to any fan interest. It became very odd. And Todd Browning himself was a circus and sideshow performer. I'll just read at the top. Of all the novelty acts in his pre-movie career, none was as bizarre as his, quote, hypnotic living corpse routine, in which, to the amazement of the carnival crowd, Browning was buried alive in a shallow grave for up to 48 hours. He used a tube to breathe and to receive malted milk pellets. Okay, this is when people were entertained by very simple things. A man was lying in a shallow grave, not moving, and being fed malted milk tablets, and people came and paid 25 cents to see it. So, what are you going to... Yeah, it is. Well, there's a large reality TV component to the sideshow idea, period, yes. The sideshow is alive and well. It's called Jerry Springer. Great little moment when you delve deep into research. F. Scott Fitzgerald was on the set, on the MGM set, while Freaks was being filmed. He was writing and totally alcoholic, miserable. And in a horrific moment for him, he sat down to have lunch next to the Hilton sisters, joined at the hip. He was horrified and demanded that from then on, all of the sideshow performers were to have their meals outside of the commissary where he was eating. He became physically ill. Poor F. Scott Fitzgerald. Here's a shot that I came up with. There's a scene of the sideshow performers banned to this table. Those other people, I guess, are just people that worked on the set, but they were banned from the commissary to this outdoor table. Prince Randian, are you guys familiar with him at all? The human torso. He had 3 children. He lived in a mansion in New Jersey. He lived to be about 58 years old. He spoke 4 languages. There's Schlitzie, and you can just see a little piece of Johnny Eck there. So here's my take on the Freaks movie, which is kind of a centerpiece to Nobody's Fool, to my book. I decided to just play it as it was, just draw literally each scene as it happened. I didn't interpret or change anything. So this is the scene in which, if you go to YouTube, it's 26 minutes into the movie. It lasts for 3 or 4 minutes. Obviously, Schlitzie was not able to act or remember lines, but he comes across as very sincere and real, which is the way he was. He couldn't act, he couldn't pretend. He just was who he was. So in the scene, Frozzo tells him how pretty he looks, and he goes on to kind of flatter him. Schlitzie responds by going, "Oh, gee, you men say the funniest things," that kind of physical action. He's promised to get a big hat when he gets to Paris. He's going to get a feather in the hat, and 2 of the other Pinhead characters, Elvira and Jenny Lee Snow, who were usually billed in circus sideshows as Pip and Flip, the twins from Yucatan. Okay, you have to remember something about sideshows in the 20s, even to the 50s. To say that someone was Aztec or from the Yucatan or from Zanzibar or from Borneo was the equivalent of saying they were from Mars. This was exotic places that nobody had any idea they just knew the name. It sounded exotic. And so, of course, the sideshow talker would play that up. From Zanzibar, living on nothing but grasshoppers in the jungle, and they would go on and on. So Schlitzie was part of that scene, and so was Elvira and Jenny Lee. They spent their entire career, aside from this movie, on Coney Island. They were given a car, which they drove around Coney Island. So here's, the beginning of the revenge scene when Hans, the midget, who's a German actor, when he knows he's being poisoned, and Cleo leaves the sideshow caravan, just to go somewhere else, and she senses her doom. If you've seen the film, this is a chilling moment in the film. And it all takes place in a thunderstorm at night, just to add more drama to it. So if you haven't seen the movie, just go to YouTube and watch it, or buy the DVD. It's incredible. So the movie premiered in 1932. It lasted about 2 weeks before it was withdrawn. The reaction to it was negative, but only in the sense that the critics didn't say it was a bad film, like it had a bad story or bad acting. They just said, why do we have to be subjected to this repulsive thing, these horrible people? Why would we want to sit in a movie theater and watch them? No sympathy whatsoever for the fact that some of them were physically handicapped or that they were very talented in different ways. The reaction was universally one of repulsion, which doomed the movie very quickly. Here's a quick scene from the other movie I said he was in. Some people think he was in a third movie. I can't remember the title of it, but it's not him. He only appeared in 2 movies. And if you can watch this is I had to buy the DVD for this, but it's a wonderful scene where you see Schlitzie in the background while this talker is doing his spiel. And Schlitzie just goes through these wonderful expressions. And once again, he's unself-conscious. He doesn't know that he's being filmed. He doesn't know what that is. He's a child or almost, he's innocent in every way. And so you get a great feeling for who he is from this sequence. Just watch the film. Here's, jumping ahead a little bit. When I found this, I really fell into the floor. I was researching through newspaperarchives.com, and I found in 1962, after an appearance Schlitzie made at the Cow Palace in San Francisco, the Schlitzie haircut craze swept San Francisco, and hundreds of boys went into the barber and said, "Give me the Schlitzie." They actually not just shaved their head, but they put 8 hairs in a little bow, and they walked out looking exactly like Schlitzie, with a slightly different shaped head, of course. But this is just research gold that this happened, Okay, now this is a man who brought Schlitzie to life for me. Everything up until now that I've been talking about was all done mostly through reading and through online research. But in the process of doing that, I found a sideshow blog in which a man named Wolf Krakowski did a 1-page little essay about his summer spent on the circus tour in Canada with Schlitzie in 1965, toward the end of Schlitzie's career. I did some research and got his address. He lived an hour and a half from me in Northampton, Massachusetts. And I went there and had several long talks with him. Now, as opposed to the Ward Hall or sideshow manager people who I talked to, who basically tried to sell me Schlitzie as if I was on the sideshow bally and they were trying to get 50 cents out of me, Schlitzie the Pinhead, This guy was a sensitive, caring human being he understood Schlitzie as a person. He spent lots of time with him, traveled throughout Canada for 3 months, sometimes rooming next door in the same hotel. He went to work every morning in a car with Schlitzie. He knew all kinds of wonderful things about just what it was like to be in Schlitzie's presence. He thought it was a great privilege to be in Schlitzie's presence. And he just gave me this wonderful insight into Schlitzie as a person. There he is. He sent me a picture of himself at that age in 1965. He spent the entire summer carrying around Jean-Paul Sartre's Being and Nothingness and getting into Schlitzie. That was his summer. He said wherever he went, the other circus performers would always make fun of the book he was reading. They would call him an egghead, an intellectual, and it didn't stop him. So in the book, I actually I lay out one of the interviews I had with him pretty much as it was, word for word, verbatim. So I'll read a little bit. So at the bottom left on the first page, Wolf reminisces. Like all children, Schlitzie craved tenderness and affection. He would snuggle up to me, and I would put my arms around him. This simple contact and warmth caused him to moan and weep. I was too young and inexperienced at the time to fully grasp the totality of what he must have been feeling. I was 18. I worked the bumper cars for the Conklin and Garrett shows at the Canadian National Exhibition, also at the Western Ontario Fair in London, Ontario. Then I asked Wolf, how did you get to know Schlitzie? Did you two work together? No, Bill, not exactly. I got to know him staying at the hotel. Schlitzie had a caretaker there named Frenchie. What was his daily routine like? Was Frenchie nice to him? Yeah, he was kind. Frenchie would drive us all to work in the morning, me, Schlitzie, and the other ride boys. He'd stop at the government-run liquor store for his bottle, and he told me he was a gypsy prince. So this is just wonderful, real world, real life detail to know for me, to get a feel for Schlitzie's routine, his daily, actual life. Wolf told me that Schlitzie would, if you were sitting next to you, he would start to hug you. And he was told by Schlitzie's manager not to let that go on too long, because Schlitzie would just keep hugging. He wouldn't let go. He really craved affection. And he got it. His sideshow performers around him were truly his family. In the sideshow, there's kind of a code of behavior. The sideshow performers who are skilled, like a sword swallower is just a skill, right? They protect and oversee, as kind of in a parental way, the sideshow performers who are physically handicapped, who need help. They see to it that they get their meals, that they get paid, whatever. They see that they're taken care of. So Schlitzie always had this family around him of fellow sideshow performers that treated him much like a child. And he returned their love with his own love. Mm-hmm. This is just two shots of his last, it's not his last manager, but his last major manager. I think it's really funny. This is Wardhall's first poster on the left. It says Wardhall and Perky Perkins, the poor man's Charlie McCarthy. Another hit for sure. This is at the butt end of show business, you can tell right away. But that's Wardhall on the right, and that's what he was like when he was talking to me. He would hardly ever let go of this sideshow persona. I remember I stopped him once. I said, what did he eat? What was his favorite meal? Things like that. And he would say, it's fried chicken. He liked fried chicken. Then he'd go right back to his spiel. So it was worth talking to, but without Wolf Krakowski, I would not have a fully rounded picture of who Schlitzie was. So Wardhall is talking to me there on the left. He said, Schlitzie, oh yeah, he could be a delight, like a happy child. Music, yeah, he loved music. He'd listen and keep time with a spoon. Food, well, his favorite food was fried chicken with mashed potatoes. He had to be forced to eat salad. Whenever he dropped something, he would crack up laughing and point to his empty hand. I heard that from many people that saw him in his act. If he dropped something, he would think it was the funniest thing in the world, and he would point to the empty hand as the evidence of how funny it was. They traveled, Wardhall and Schlitzie and other performers traveled throughout mostly New England, in this school bus. They got stopped once by the cops. The driver of the truck they were in had let his driver's license expire, but when the cops saw Schlitzie in the bottom right, he let them go right away. He was, he didn't want to think about what to do with Schlitzie. This is the only picture I could find of a very important man in Schlitzie's life. This is from the 50s. A man named Bill Unks. He was a sword swallower. Okay, I'm only showing him because you're going to see how important he was in a little while. So what happened to Schlitzie in 1965, late in 1965, is his adoptive parents. He was adopted by George and Dodie Surtees in 1934. They were his managers, but they also legally adopted him. So for the next 30 years, he was a member of the family, sort of. They had a daughter who was not happy about this. She was actually grossed out by it. She hated Schlitzie. But in 1965, when both George and Dodie died, their daughter, who had no affection whatsoever for Schlitzie, committed him to the LA County Hospital, where he went into a deep, deep depression. Schlitzie thrived on human contact. Here he had no human contact whatsoever, no anything, just he was left alone. I realized when I drew these pages that his head had to be shaved every day to be bald, the way he was in the sideshow, so I added some hair. Then, if you read the book, you'll see it in much greater detail. Bill Unks worked in the LA County Hospital, Bill Unks, the sword swallower, as an orderly during the off-season when he wasn't on the sideshow. He was sweeping up in a room. He heard some moaning in the room down the hall. He went in and discovered Schlitzie. Schlitzie had a very warm and affectionate relationship with Bill Unks. It took Schlitzie a minute to register what was happening, but when he did, he just fell into his arms. Bill Unks rescued Schlitzie from a horrible, awful, terrible death. Bill Unks was then working for a man named Sam Alexander, who was a sideshow manager. He and Sam Alexander had an appointment with the officials at the LA County Hospital. They released Schlitzie into their care. This would never happen now, of course. This was 1965. They just said, make sure he comes back once every 6 months for a medical checkup. They let him go. Schlitzie went back to the sideshow. I'm skipping ahead here, but there's pages after this in the book. You'll see where Schlitzie went back to the sideshow. He found his old friends, his family. He was happy. He spent 3.5, 4 years back on the sideshow. Limited capacity. He was now a man in his late 60s. He did most of his routines sitting down at that point in his life, but he was very happy. When he finally couldn't perform anymore, Sam Alexander hired a guy. I only have his first name, Dick. And Dick was hired to live with Schlitzie and take care of him. And he did. This is in Los Angeles. They lived on Santa Monica Boulevard in an apartment above a dry cleaning store. And every day, Dick would take Schlitzie out for a little walk. They lived near MacArthur Park, which is a very large park in LA that's, at that time was largely inhabited by Chicano people, Mexican people of the neighborhood. They adopted him. They gave him the name El Ratoncito, which means the little mouse. They told Schlitzie when he died he would go straight to heaven. So not only was he happy to be back on the sideshow before this, but he was then happy again to be interacting with people. He fed the ducks. He and Dick would walk up and down Hollywood Boulevard, and Schlitzie would dance and sell postcards. I desperately tried to find home movies. I am sure somebody took home movies of this, but I couldn't find them anywhere. I would love to be able to see This is the end of the book, and I just kind of lay it out the way it really happened. Dick is selling postcards. He has a little transistor radio. He puts the transistor radio in a garbage can, and Schlitzie starts to dance. Those are all real things. On Hollywood Boulevard, the Frolic Room is actually still there. It looks just like that. And Schlitzie, in the last pages of the book, I just have him dancing, and he just dances into the horizon. He died on September 24th, 1971. He was buried in an unmarked grave in Queen of Heaven Cemetery in Rowland Heights, California. Almost 40 years later, a group of admirers got together and arranged for a proper headstone. I added the beer. That's it.